It gives me great pleasure to be joined by another speaker, also known as Hollywood's man in Southeast Asia. He's a producer of numerous movies, documentaries, TV dramas, and also Southeast Asian commercials. He's been working in the industry for more than 25 years. Please welcome Mr. Nicholas Simon along with Michael Peyser.
How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing well. Nice to see you, Michael.
And, how many movies were you working on today?
We've got one just leaving a new Regency project, just leaving, Bali, and a crew flying into Cambodia. We are wrapping The Meg, Warner Brothers production. And then
that's a sequel to the very successful one you already did, right?
Yeah, we didn't do the first one.
Oh, you didn't.
We have a original content that we've licensed to a streamer, one of the major streamers for their Asian launch. That's in production. It's non-scripted. And then we've got a number of TV commercials going on, and our Japanese sister company has even more. So it's been a busy morning before jumping on with you.
I know the feeling. It sounds like I prepared a lot, but really I was working on about 12 things myself. The first thing is, how did you end up coming to Southeast Asia?
I'll do the short version there, but I had studied East Asian history. I'd gone to Columbia University in New York City and studied East Asian history. I thought that I came to Vietnam back in 1994, probably before most of the audience was born. And I thought that I was going to be a journalist, realized I didn't like writing, and met up with a French unit production manager who was doing a movie called Cyclo, by Tran Anh Hung, that went on to win at Venice, and we
a wonderful filmmaker.
Yeah.
Scent of the Green Papaya is, I would say, in my top 10 list.
Fantastic. So yeah, that was my introduction to film production, and it was the wild east back then, and we convinced the regional head of Ogilvy and Mather that we could produce TV commercials, not knowing anything about it. And
that's the best way to produce TV commercials.
So it's, it was one sort of misstep and success, and misstep and success. And now I have 4 different companies based across Asia.
Mm-hmm. And are these are working with crews coming from all over the world, right?
The Indochina Productions is set up to really do what's called production service. So, when the Meg, when New Regency, when the studios want to shoot in Asia, now we're in 14 different territories from Japan to the Maldives. We're often contacted, and then we help them facilitate their shoots in the various countries. Identifying a lot of the things that you went through in your earlier talk, identifying which is right for the production, with the infrastructure, with the locations, with soft money, i.e. government incentives.
Mm-hmm. And also, it's figuring out how much crew they're bringing, maybe, and how much of the crew you're delivering.
Exactly, and each project is different. We had 2, 7-8 figure, 8-9 figure projects this year, one of them had most of the HODs were Thai. We shot for 16 weeks in Thailand. We're doing 4 weeks in 4 other countries. And the line producer the co-production designer, co-costume designer are all from Thailand. And then a similarly budgeted movie, because it had the Thai component was so small, we had over 200. Relatively, it was only about 5-6 weeks compared to double that in the UK beforehand. They brought in over 250 foreigners just for the continuity, to carry over. So each project is very specific to in and of itself, from budget to creative demands to locations. And as always, as a lot of your things have mentioned, just it's about price point too.
Right. Unfortunately, don't you find that you can say you should spend more money because it has value that will actually change and enhance the movie, but they'll say, no.
Yeah, always. And I mean, I was working on a project called Pinkville that MGM was backing about the My Lai massacre with Oliver Stone. And they were budgeted, and this is 20 years ago, they were budgeted for over 50 million, which was a decent budget, probably what, 70, 80 million now. And as Oliver Stone said, if you have 50, you need 100. If you have 100, you need 150. So it's, there's directors always want more.
Right. And sometimes they deserve it, but I talked a little bit about how budgeting, scheduling, planning, storytelling, pre-visualizing has changed the whole modus operandi, the whole process of planning and then shooting films, because you can actually almost create the movie with 3 people at a computer sitting someplace, and then sort of pre-visualize it to say, where do we want to spend that money? Where do we want to spend the time? How do we take the script and make it come to life? Do you experience that when people come in early to scout and figure out what they're going to do?
Yeah, and it's, I think technology, I mean, there are two, the business is changing so rapidly. I mean, you're talking about pre-visualization. There's also, virtual studios where you're creating environments, on LED screens. Technology is rapidly changing our industry, but, and opening up, I wouldn't be surprised if in 2 to 3 years, a lot of lower to mid-budget Thai productions are instead of flying to Paris or trying to, go to Mongolia to shoot something, start, having, there are a couple of them, but, once the price point goes down, virtual studios would most likely become an alternative to traveling and shooting on location. Indochina is now my second major company. I had a previous one that still exists in Vietnam, but it's doing mainly just local projects now. But the way that we've been able to survive is really about adapting and accepting these changes. And we're with one of the streamers, we've been instrumental in for a Japanese company in opening up the mindset of Japanese productions, looking at lower cost places to do studio shoots, and that opens Thailand up to being a back office for the Japanese production industry.
It is weird when you have to deal with people who are so used to their own way of making movies, and you're so used to being adaptable, but you actually have to lead the horse to water. You actually have to say, no, this is how it gets done down here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, and something really for the audience, I mean, Thailand, all of these countries have their, all these countries being like Southeast Asian and Asian countries have their traditional film industries, but now with the rise of the streamers and, both for production service, but also producing for those streamers, it's the two worlds, for lack of a better word, let's say the Hollywood industry and the international content industry and the local industries have to find a way to be more compatible. And to work together. And the streamers aren't going to totally adjust to the way that Thailand traditionally does it, or Japan, and just basic things of working with industry standard software like Movie Magic budgeting and scheduling, to financial reconciliation, to on international standards, to location agreements and all of those. And it's so I think that, on forget why I went off on this tangent, but I think that
but it's used. I know people who have come to make big movies, Transformers in Asia, and then we're supposed to go to China, and they eventually said we can't go to China because the people who are going to hire the local crew are not going to pay the local crew what we're paying them.
Got it.
They're going to take a percentage, and unfortunately that breaks laws in the United States. So Paramount Pictures can't be party to that kind of behavior. Yeah. And there is a basis of legal good practice and, as you said, schedule computer programs that allow there to be scheduling and budgeting that tells you where you are pretty much on a daily basis.
Yeah, and it's something that we've sort of advocated for and helped, and it not only benefits our business but the industry as a whole. Is I've worked with a French insurance broker based out of Vietnam who's now been able to bring industry standard coverage to most of Southeast Asia. Mm-hmm. And it's just, when you have a policy backed by Lloyd's of London, whether on a TV commercial or on a feature film, it just not only is your policy going to pay out, when your drone crashes, et cetera, but it gives your clients that much, or the streamers and all of that much more confidence. But it's sort of like the nitty gritty and the boring side of producing, from insurance, and these standards and practices, and it allows the streamers to actually increase their output and have more. They'll invest more in the local industry.
Is there, for instance, in Thailand, because I'm not really up on it, I've read a little bit, but like the European countries, you have to be able to have, let's say, Netflix in Spain, France, and Germany, 30% of the production that appears on their front of their platform, new stuff, has to be made in Europe.
There's no legislation in place in Thailand, or I believe in Southeast Asia, for the streamers.
Territorial cultural spend.
Yeah, and I think that there are pros and cons to it. The French industry, which has always been very supportive of the of French content. I think before the streamers, you could say that often government funding was more of a hindrance to creativity than a real booster. But it's, I think that it's interesting. It's Spain has such success these days from shows that have been produced there, that have traveled internationally, like Netflix's Money Heist. France has what, Call My Agent, I believe that's right. The translated title. So I think that not knowing much about the policies, but they probably have helped build up the local industries.
And it's hard to know whether that would be something worthwhile, or a country of, whether Thailand would say, well, you have to do it to be here. And I mean, it's only going to work if all the countries band together and create some kind of.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, what's been the mandate in the streamers for the last two to 3 years, and now Netflix has been in, let's say, in Thailand for a long time now. Amazon is ramping up, Disney Plus is ramping up, and HBO Max are all ramping up, and they all have very similar mandates, which is they want sort of natural and organic and local language content that resonates with the Thai audience. So how do you do that? You hire Thai creative and you shoot in Thailand. And I think that 5 years ago there was much more of a mandate to I know both in Japan and also in Thailand, and then it was pretty much just Netflix was the only main player, but they were trying to do like more heavily influenced local content, but with a strong, let's say, Hollywood component, and that's fallen away. And I think that that's where there's a huge opportunity for young filmmakers and producers to concentrate on what they know best, which is their own country and culture. And it's also the price points are similar to what a feature film is similar to what the normal market will bear, with a slight premium, because by and large they're buying it in perpetuity.
Right, and there are you can always take a classic story and bring it to your locality and make it very much of your place, and you can tell it in any neighborhood, and you can discover the kind of talent potentially that can become faces that people want to see in market, and then they can start to travel and commingle in international projects too.
Yep.
I mean, the most successful projects now are diverse. The Fast and the Furiouses and the Marvel worlds are starting to be multicultural on purpose, so they can be world product.
Yep.
They're not really great movies necessarily, but we'll see. What are the streamers looking for from the local industry? What do they want?
I mean, each streamer has slightly different mandates, and I don't want to totally speak on their behalf, and that's.
No. But just you don't have to name them. You just have to say this one and that one.
I'd say, and you can see from their programming already. I mean, some are more heavily bent on non-scripted, i.e., reality. Others are, but by and large, everyone's looking for scripted series, like Squid Games, something that is local language that can platform internationally. I mean, that's really, what everyone is looking for. Mm-hmm. But then, some of the streamers have also have, like, I'd say almost secondary mandates for local language genre, feature films or series, from horror to romantic comedies to action films. And it's Thailand, horror in Thailand is a very successful genre already, and it's something that transfers. So I'm sure that there are some producers or and writer directors listening in, and if you have those scripts, it's the streamers are looking for content like that. I think that there's also a price point that it would be very difficult to get a $10 million feature film financed through a streamer if it's Thai language, just because the market doesn't really bear it.
But it would pay a $500,000 movie.
I'd say you're probably looking on the high end to 2.5 million on down.
Right. So at some point there will be a Jason Blum of Thailand.
I think that we're working on it, and I think a lot of people.
Good.
Yeah, and and what's interesting then, if you create a production pipeline like that, and I think that I don't know if I'm jumping around too much, but don't forget the traditional sort of output places where the movie theaters are filling up again. Thailand has two very strong movie theater companies that you can a lot of local people partner with, and then it's also a question: do you carve out rights? Do you try to keep a theatrical window? Do you finance it yourself and do what's called more like a negative pickup or a post sale? Because one thing which is great about the streamers is that they're putting billions in content. Something that's not great is that they're trying to buy everything in perpetuity.
I talked about that a lot throughout.
And it's so sometimes it's okay to do on your first deal or to get things under your belt, but it's we just encountered something and we turned it into a licensing deal with one of the streamers just because you looked at the numbers, and we packaged a project and we're going to produce it, and then you're like, wow, for everything we're going to get such a minimal fee, and the only upside is if it's a success we get that minimal fee plus 10%. We went back.
I explained that the difference of selling subscriptions as opposed to trying to hit the jackpot with an audience.
Yeah.
It's a different business, quite frankly. I think producers here, the Producers Guild this past weekend, really got pissed off and are trying to figure out there has to be some sort of middle ground where you can not have to be bought forever. But
I'd be happy to have a sidebar with you and the guild, which I'm a member. Because what's interesting is Asia is actually presenting itself with opportunities to alter the precedent, because the U.S. 1% of the people got their $300 million deals, and everyone else is basically being shafted.
Yep. And that's why there is some hope for those. Earlier on, I showed how big the streamers are and how big the social media companies are really in the equation. And I think there's an opportunity to change business affairs practice so it's not necessarily so expensive that you can't fight. Paying the lawyer will clean you out as a producer before you can go actually do it. So you sort of settle and say, I can't fight this anymore. I do believe that in the way that blockchain is agreement, our firm agreements for payments and schedules and delivery of benefit out of a business relationship, that's going to become more and more acceptable in the general commerce. So it would be great to lead that in the motion picture industry, both for the makers, the crews, and for the idea that if something does gain the public's embrace, that it is a way of rewarding and enabling filmmakers to then have more freedom and make more movies.
Yep.
That's simple. What are the things in terms of global and local industry standards and practices that all of the Southeast Asian countries might need to deal with? Things like internet, 5G, insurance, you mentioned immigration, bringing in those 300 people, health management, all that kind of things. What are they?
I mean, and then the new one in the last two years is COVID protocol, which is crazy. On some of our projects and other projects can take up to 10% of your production budget. So it's, I think each country, right now on one of the studio films, I mean, we just wrapped another large drone unit project for Universal Studios in Bali, and now we're back there doing another main unit project both in Bromo and also Bali after having been in Nepal, and we're, as I mentioned, we're transferring to Cambodia, and then after Cambodia to Japan. And what's interesting is jumping around to these different countries, you realize how different each one of them are. How I'd say Thailand is leaps and bounds beyond all the others in terms of the infrastructure and the standards and practices. Is that they have, they have, from the immigration, their immigration policy, the way that you get working visas, the film permit to work visas, to they have a simple solution for short form projects. If the director is going to be on the ground and shooting for fewer than 15 days, there are a number, and then it's a carnet country. When a country like Vietnam doesn't have carnet, how do you handle that? Right. And
something's being shipped between the two, and all of a sudden, wait a second, there's
and it's $500,000 worth of camera equipment and stuff. So Thailand, that it's also insurance, as I mentioned before, they have that in place. There are for larger projects, there are legal firms in Thailand that are familiar with sort of the protocol and the film agreements, from crew deal memos to location agreements to supplier agreements. And that's actually something that Thailand, we're working with a local law firm to see if we're able to get help build out the infrastructure, because you have, I forget the huge international law firms, but not many productions can afford 50+ grand US for checking their local legal documents.
The guy who's the head lawyer at Sony now used to be a guy who actually 20 years ago started a business where he realized none of the independent producers could afford it, and he just created all the forms. And he just said, here are the forms, fill them out, I'll read them over, you'll be done. You pay me $1,000 or $1,500, and now that it's a bit of a canard to spend $1,000 an hour on somebody reading
on something that's basically a template, anyways. 99% of it.
And if they weren't there, you could probably arm wrestle a little better to win the point. Deliverables. Does Thailand have enough digital finishing to satisfy, let's say, a Netflix ridiculous?
What's interesting, and I mean, there are a number of the post facilities here. I would say they're, I'd say, the best in definitely the best in Southeast Asia, and very competitive with Asia. They're not to the standards of Australia yet. And I'd say, the government, an easy way to for the government to have people invest more would be to make it very clear for the film incentive to apply solely for post-production, and possibly lowering the spend on that. And there's also talk of increasing it from 20 to 30%. And if you did that, that's how Australia was able to grow their post industry, which is not just offline and online editing. It's VFX, it's animation.
Their animation business was created by the government.
Yeah.
Because 3 or 4 big filmmakers wanted to make animated movies.
Yeah. And, what's interesting at the moment already, and you have, the 3 of the companies that, and I hope some of the reps are on this call, but you have Cantana, you have White Light, and also One Cool. And, I believe all of them have or are working with various streamers, delivering to the standards. Some of them are doing the subtitling, others are, doing the deliverables on specific, from soup to nuts, from start to finish, on whether series or, one-offs.
We, at USC, one of the unique things about the film school is they taught sound better than any other school in the world. And they had a lot of really great sound people there. And by the time graduate students finished mixing student films, they were ready to open up shops and started to become hireable. It turned out, don't go to, you can make a great living if you actually do the post-production and the delivery side of the world, and you can make it really creative. You can add benefits to movies and the way they're executed. Everybody thinks of it as a visual medium, but not anymore. Now it's an immersive experience, so it's having that to do. I understand there is an LED stage with an LED.
And it's been. I know that it's been used on international productions that have come through. I mean, we've used it. They also have a motion capture facility there. But it's. I really strongly feel that the Thai government, would promote the film incentive solely, for post-production, or not solely, but also just for post-production only projects, and lower the qualifying spend. Before you know it, you're going to have 10 different suppliers for virtual stages, volume stages, and it's really, that's where I'd say the post-production doesn't yet have the critical mass for it to be a true destination place for. It would be great to get companies, like ILM, to have back offices, etc. here.
That, and potentially even the huge investments which will eventually come out of Shenzhen and Guangzhou and places like that.
I mean, it's Malaysia was very successful. There's one company, a Chinese American company called Base FX that. But they were able to, I believe, lobby or get the film incentive, which is 30% there, to qualify solely for post-production work. And now I believe they have over 1,000 employees, and they do a lot of the back end work for The Mandalorian and other Lucas properties and stuff. So it's.
No, I mean, Tom, who spoke earlier about Asian cinema, is involved in building sort of Hollywood working all over the world, and being able to do that. So it's fascinating to see that doesn't matter where you are, but you could be in Thailand and doing with the right facilities and the right training of people, doing any level of filmmaking at various different price points. And I think that's the name of the game of how to build it and create your own, expand your own cinema. International producers, because that's a little bit what we were talking about. If you're a Thai producer you got something or you want to develop a bunch of IP, how do you build that relationship with the international? It doesn't have to be Hollywood, it could be Europe, UK, different language groups.
There are many different avenues. I think a lot of it's dictated by what is your content like. If it's more art house fare, there's a whole infrastructure for that, from the Hubert Balls Foundation to Cannes to Rotterdam. The Toronto has a big Asian, supports a lot of Asian film fest. I'm on the board of directors of the Luang Prabang Film Festival that is been coined the Sundance of Southeast Asia, and that's something that so there's on the art house, on the more streamer based places is now Netflix has its own Thailand office. HBO, Amazon, and Disney Plus are Thailand is all run out of Singapore. So it's any producer is only as good as his or her use of the phone, and it's
or the face-to-face where it becomes not pushing business but establishing a relationship.
Exactly. So
and showing your goods, showing that you did create something of merit and quality.
And the other thing is, if you are a producer with ambitions of doing multiple projects, don't go just with one project, because you never, it's best to have a slate of films. They don't all have to be interrelated, but understand the market, understand, what's been successful, what the streamers are buying. You can access all that information by reading the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, and
they all auto translate too.
Yeah.
By the way.
And so and then you push your way into getting meetings, and in whether investing in a trip down to Singapore, and nothing beats face to face, especially post COVID, but it's also try to understand, listen to them of what they're looking for too.
And try to identify storytellers, directors, they could be producers or directors, who are fresh, who you just get a sense that they have enough determination, but also vision and sophistication of capturing something that will sell itself.
And in Thailand, I know it's right now there's a real renaissance going on of from the success of Netflix's Girl from Nowhere, that ended up Thai language series that ended up being #1 in I think 10 countries around the world. It's made an international star out of Kitty Chica, the lead talent. It's made her, let's say, very, lack of a better word, green lightable or financeable, and if you have, another Thai director by the name of Baz, who he did Bad Genius a couple years ago, and then just did with Wong Kar-wai One for the Road, but he also just shot, he did the pilot episode and then follow-up episodes for the Netflix Thai Cave series. And there are a number of other, younger, or I'd say even journeywomen filmmakers who, I think that producers, if you identify them and you can use their either rising star or their pedigree from the past to jumpstart your production.
and base a whole one movie or a whole series of movies. And
Yeah.
I do think bingeable, creating series that people, you'd rather commission something at a lower price point that's going to fill 10 hours, and have them coming back or watching it all at once. The big battle here in the States is some platforms will put it on and load down a whole series, and some are doing the first 3 and then stretching it out. Some are saying, HBO, no, I only get to show you 1 and you have to come back every week. But people, if you develop, if you deliver the quality, it's amazing what can happen. You mentioned what the government sort of needs to do to help. What does the industry itself? I mean, is training good enough? Is the opportunity good enough?
I think that Thailand has a great infrastructure for technicians, for equipment companies, where it's, I'd say, what's inhibiting it both as, it's very good as a production service place, and where it's lacking, and for me, working both in Japan and Thailand, you see the difference of IP creation. IP creation in Japan is world class. I mean, they're above and beyond anywhere else. And from original ideas to original scripts to books and manga, novels that then can be transferred over. And Thailand IP creation is, for lack of a better word, I'd say stunted. And that's something that I'm not an expert. How do you? I mean, in some ways, that's how do you change the zeitgeist of a nation to get people to start, writing original screenplays, to writing novels that can be adapted, or interesting investigative journalist stories and stuff. I think that it's happening on a piecemeal level. There's a wonderful documentary on Netflix now called Hope Frozen by Palin Waddell, that won at Hot Docs, and she won an Emmy for it. She was a journalist for Al Jazeera who found the story and created a beautiful documentary about it. But and I don't know if it's something that the government can support, or whether it's the private sector, but there's a real need to train up, screenwriters. And, I think I mentioned to Thai Media Group that, would maybe it's even just starting with the screenwriting contest. For Thailand,
or build a culture of reading groups online, that meet and criticize and come back and learn from others, and build it into the social fiber of congregating, is to storytell. And if anything is at the basis of Thai culture is a hugely deep theatrical and storytelling culture.
And it's everyone's using South Korea as the sort of the king of soft power, and they've been able. And what I think is interesting is that it's been a combination of government mandates and also corporate, CJ Entertainment, and there's a visionary woman behind that, and that really invested a lot in directors. And she realized 20 years ago that it's a long-term game.
Yep. And it is about all aspects, not just men making movies, let's put it that way.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly.
About embracing the new reality, which is we're all beautiful and we're all challenged, and we have to figure out how to support each other. Yeah, and
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Simon and Mr. Peyser. Very insightful points you both have made. Moving on to the Q&A session, we have a lot of questions from our audience members. The first question I would like to ask is about the industry in terms of what companies are at or have the market share of the top 5% in the over-the-top or OTT market. And what comes to mind right now for me are people such as Netflix, Disney, or Amazon. This person would like to know who are like the key players in the OTT market, the top 5%.
It's probably, believe it or not that they've stepped up yet. I would say NBC Universal, Sky, that conglomerate is probably pretty big. And Apple.
Oh,
Yeah.
Apple. Okay.
Yeah.
Apple's the richest company that survived the crash to some extent better
Yeah.
than the others.
And Apple is spending, I think it's between $5 and $8 billion a year on content. But their content is, as mentioned before, each of these streamers has a different mandate behind it, and Amazon also is involved in live sports, and Netflix said no to that, and Apple is very much about destination premium programming and to sell their devices.
Documentaries, perhaps as well too, in Apple TV.
They have a couple, but they're very, it's the type of thing that you've got to have Barack Obama in it, or it has to be, a high concept, high profile.
Okay.
I think again the easiest way to research all this is to go into the trade, see what these streamers are green lighting, and then also just go on the platform and see what they've done today.
Okay.
But Apple has a presence out of Japan, but they're not. If you look at they're not so interested in local language. They're interested in. They did a project called Pachenko, which is an award-winning book. Set in Korea, but the Japanese and Korean conflict, and it's I believe they're not doing local language content in the same way as Netflix. Pachenko was made, I believe it's even English language.
It is English.
Yeah, to satisfy Apple's sort of worldwide diaspora.
Okay, so something to look at if one is interested in approaching Apple. They're doing it in the English language, not really the local language.
Mostly,
Yeah.
not
mostly.
in.
How about Amazon? We have Amazon Prime developing as well. in the
Amazon
market.
Prime,
Oh,
which
Amazon.
it also now owns MGM UA.
Yeah, and Amazon Prime is now rapidly expanding in Southeast Asia. They have a Singapore office that they're if people are interested in jobs, I think that you can Google it. They're always looking for new executives, but then it's and what's following and already in place is that they're starting to greenlight and commission local language content.
Yep. And would you say Disney as well? Disney? What do you think about Disney?
So the biggest players right now are Netflix, HBO Max, Disney, Disney/Hotstar,
Okay.
and Amazon. And then you have a second tier of Apple. I believe Paramount Plus just did a deal.
Paramount, Viacom, the whole.
Just did a deal with CJ in Korea, but from what I understand, it's only about Korean language content initially. So the four that I mentioned, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, and HBO Max, those are the go-to international OTT platforms. But also, don't forget in Thailand, you have, for a while, Line was aggressive. I think that they've fallen off, but I believe AIS and True are both, at various stages of local language content, even though it might be at lower price points. But then there's also, don't forget about YouTube.
Yep. Also iQIYI, the Chinese platform as well.
Exactly.
Okay. So some very interesting things to look at right there. You touched upon the pros and cons before of filming. Somebody would like to know the pros and cons of filming in Thailand, besides being very hot all year round. What are the pros and cons, do you think, of filming in Thailand?
Michael, do you want me to take that?
I'm afraid you'll have to, because
Okay, my pleasure.
A 4-hour turnaround in the airport in Thailand. I've actually only been in the airport. So.
Okay, so I'd say there aren't really many cons of shooting in Thailand, and what's happening, what is fantastic is that you have world-class crew and facilities and a growing number of studios. And a growing, as we talked about, you have some volume stages. Probably in the next year or two, you're going to have more coming on stage. You have decent post-production. It could be stronger. Okay, VFX, and it's possible. And I know that a lot of Hong Kong movies, Japanese movies, Korean come, and it's possible to do an international caliber film in Thailand from start to finish.
All right. Some things you can call them the competitive advantage that Thailand has over other countries for filming, particularly in Thailand. Good team, very good post-production as well, is what you're saying. All right. Talking about filming, somebody asked as well, can you elaborate more on filming with smartphones? Because you said there are also cheaper ways in filming, and smartphones nowadays are very high tech.
We just recently did a TV commercial with David Gelb, who's very famous for Hero Dreams of Sushi and Chef's Table.
Okay.
And it was an ad for Apple, and the whole thing was shot on an iPhone. So I think, we're on around $100 million movie right now that's using Mavic Pros, prosumer drones, and all of our cameras are there's Sony's, but you can buy them for $4,000 a piece for the body. So I think I always should try to avoid just doing things out because it's cheap, it's prosumer, but there are projects that tend lend themselves to to that technology, and I think that as a producer or director, if you use you can use technology at a lower price point to your advantage.
Well, I've seen a lot of companies right now are starting to use DSLR cameras as well, rather than big, huge production cameras. If you were to use a smartphone, I mean, you would need lighting, you would need microphones as well, besides just the smartphone, right? Could you elaborate more on how?
Well, again, it all depends on how you're outputting, and as Michael also said, if you want to shoot it, if you want to sell it to Netflix, it's having the technological specs from a smartphone. It's going to be, you're going to make it very challenging to sell it in the end. Because
they are only looking to deliver in a digital screen format, right? Whereas capture even at 2K, which an iPhone can do these days, it's all about how you process the image afterwards or treat it. And what I was alluding to in terms of the machine learning AI applications of how to make immersive or engaged cinema, those are going to become a whole other level of post-production. It won't just be montage. It will be an understanding of how to do that. And that's tied to the metaverse and the commercialization of when some kind of viewable metaverse happens. And that's 6-7 years away in some practicable starts.
So more engagement, such as today's event, maybe somebody at home can press a button or do something right at home and join us right now.
Yeah.
In probably the metaverse in about 5 to 7 years.
It's not going to be perfected that way. I was one of the people who helped build digital 3D in its beginning. I worked with the Irish rock band U2 to make their concert movie and it was the first thing that used digital cameras to capture a stadium concert of 80,000 people, a whole series of South American concerts. But what made it really powerful was the filmmaking, because what it did was, in a 15-song concert, the first 5 songs, you were in the best seat ever that you could watch something. The next 5 songs in the set, you were the band playing it.
Yep. So like HD quality, just right up there.
And for the last 5 songs, you were the songs.
Oh, okay. You were the songs as well.
And that notion of immersion and engagement created an intimacy rather than a spectacle that was thrilling.
So something
Now,
for the... yep.
And that idea of how to deal with how everybody on the planet's brain processes the 2 eyes together and figures out what's going on. There's so much to play with and use as new film language that these tools will be more valuable. Yes, there's both inside and outside ways that technology can help.
Something for the Thai media content producers to look forward to as well. Talking about this, a lot of things are focused in Bangkok, it seems. Somebody from the audience member asked, how can the local media in other Thai provinces, not necessarily in Bangkok, but other provinces, engage in this very interesting and exploding market of media and movies?
I mean, I think now anyone with a laptop and a smartphone can engage. I think that but you know, as COVID has also pointed out, you know, there's nothing better than in person. I know we're on a Zoom thing now, but you know, in-person engagement. You know, it's interesting on the project that we just did, big Hollywood tentpole. We actually traveled and shot over 16 weeks in 17 different provinces, and we shot it in a lot of places. Yeah, in a lot of places that haven't seen foreign productions. I mean, the bulk of the production is in Thailand, Phuket, and Chiang Mai. You know, and there are incentives in the film incentive program to try to get people outside of it. But I think that you know, I'm happy to try to help promote. You know, with the film board and with the Thai Media Fund, alternative locations. You know, Pai is one of the most beautiful areas of northern Thailand. You know, the Northeast has some really unique physical locations, and you know, the town of Songkhla in the south has, you know, beautiful historic buildings and things. You know, it's I think for the sort of the creative economy, I mean, people outside of Bangkok should just realize, like, you can access so much online, and you know, finding companies, finding people who are doing interesting projects, that it shouldn't hold you back from, whether writing your own script or, producing your own movie. And, but just, educate yourself about, what other people are doing and how to, how to deliver something that's unique, but then also done to an international standard when it's finished.
All right, so something inspiring for those independent filmmakers and also production houses that are probably watching us from outside of Bangkok and other places in other provinces in Thailand. So thank you so much, you both, for being here with us. And also a big thank you to Thomas Poulsen, who talked about the intellectual property. Thank you to Michael Peyser, who also talked about raising funds and capital for making movies. And of course, thank you to Nicholas Simon for your insights on Southeast Asia. Thank you again to our speakers.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, and excited to see what's going to come.